I was sitting at the pediatrician in Germany, filling out one of those standard forms the first time I was there with your name, date of birth, address, and then I get to a field that says mother. And I pause because, well, that role doesn't exist in our family. And then right underneath it says father, of course. And I think, yeah, well, we've got two of those. So I cross out mother and write father one, and then I add father two to the other one. And that tiny moment kind of sums up this whole experience and what it's felt like. The system isn't fully built for us yet, but somehow it's also the first place where I felt like I'm just allowed to be a dad. And that's something I truly never expected, because in the US, being a dad usually happens alongside everything else. Fatherhood exists in the margins of your calendar. In Germany, it's built into the structure of your life. And that difference, that quiet system level difference, changes everything. Because Germany doesn't just give parents time off, it redefines what fatherhood even means. In the US, there's no national paid parental leave. None. Each state has its own approach, but unless you work for one of a few companies, you rely on vacation days or unpaid leave under the Family and Medical Leave Act, which only covers about 60% of workers. According to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, just 23% of private sector employees have any form of paid family leave. And if you're a father, the numbers are even smaller. Germany, by comparison, guarantees every parent up to 14 months of paid parental leave per child, as long as both parents share at least 2 months each. The state replaces roughly 65 to 67% of your income during that time, which creates a cultural expectation that both caregivers step back from work. It's part of everyday life, not a progressive exception. When my husband Martin first talked about parental leave, or Elternzeit in German, I thought it was a nice idea, like a European luxury, but here it's not a question if you'll take it, it's a question of when and how long. German HR departments literally keep track. Some even help optimize it with Parental Leave Plus or Elterngeld Plus, which lets you spread out your benefit a bit more over more months for more flexibility. That kind of institutional care doesn't exist in the States. There, you negotiate your family life with your boss, not with your government. I remember early on looking at statistics and realizing how big this difference really is. In the United States, only about 5% of fathers take more than 2 weeks off after childbirth. In Germany, over 90% of eligible parents, mothers and fathers, use their parental leave. That's not just a number, it rewrites what families think of as normal. What struck me most was how people reacted differently to me being on leave. In the US, a dad at a playground during the workday is often treated like he's either on vacation, unemployed, or doing his partner a favor. Here in Germany, it's basically the national uniform of your first year of parenting. You have a coffee in one hand, a stroller in the other, diaper bag hanging off your shoulder. You know, nobody stares, nobody applauds you either. They just nod because this is what fathers do. When I first experienced that, I realized how invisible the pressure back home really is. In the US, 70% of fathers say they feel constant financial and professional pressure to stay working. 2/3 believe they would be seen as less committed if they took substantial lead. The American idea of a good dad is someone who provides, stays strong, and doesn't miss meetings. The German version adds something radical to that definition. Be there, not just available. And the culture mirrors law. In Germany, the entire system, from daycare to playgrounds, reinforces this expectation of shared presence. And you'll see it how on playgrounds they're designed for multi-age social play, encouraging independence rather than supervision. A Business Insider piece recently compared that American helicopter parenting shaped by fear of lawsuits or, unfortunately, fears tied to gun violence. In the US, playgrounds often have more rules, foam padding, no climbing signs. In Germany, kids climb high metal towers with minimal fencing, and parents sit back sipping coffee. It's not neglect, it's trust. The goal is raising independent citizens, not well-protected dependents. And even a constitutional difference hidden in how we talk about children. One of the most popular Reddit comments I've seen put it perfectly. In Germany, children are recognized as independent bearers of rights under the Basic Law, whereas in the US, parental rights hold more weight. I definitely felt that play out in small ways. The assumption that our child belongs to the community as much as to us. That affects everything from how teachers talk to parents to how strangers engage with your kid in conversation without first seeking permission. And then there's the social support piece, childcare. In many parts of Germany, kindergarten or daycare is subsidized or free, depending on your state. It's treated as both education and social infrastructure. In contrast, American parents face daycare costs that can be $15,000 to $20,000 per year. And that's rivaling college tuition. I myself was in daycare. I had a divorced mother working full-time. But that financial reality directly shapes who can even imagine staying home with their children. When money defines parenting options, the idea of quality time becomes a luxury good. All these structural choices create cultural ones. When a country tells you in action, go ahead, take time with your baby, you start to believe that this time is real work, not an indulgence. And that shift changes men too. In the US, public conversations about masculinity rarely include caregiving. Here, they naturally do. Germany has federal campaigns encouraging fathers to take leave since the early 2000s, with slogans like "Mehr Zeit für die Familie," more time for the family. In the streets, on the trains, you're actually seeing advertising showing men wearing baby carriers, holding bottles, doing homework. That level of representation matters. It normalizes what used to be politically radical, that tenderness is part of strength, and it's reflected in behavior. When you walk through a park in Berlin or Munich on a weekday morning, 1 in 3 strollers is pushed by a father, and no one finds that remarkable. In the US, that same image often still signals sacrifice. A man stepping back from work, maybe hurting his future earnings. But here, parenthood isn't seen as a break in your career. It's part of being a complete adult, which means that taking time off doesn't have to make men feel guilty. It gives them permission to feel needed. Of course, our story adds another layer to this picture. We're 2 dads. I expected it to be complicated, full of explanations and awkward questions. The legal forms have definitely tested my patience. The mother field refuses to die, but socially it's been surprisingly easy. At the doctor's office, no one blinked when 2 fathers showed up. They just asked, what dad is up now to bring the baby in. It's not perfect. There are still bureaucratic relics of older systems, but I felt more genuine acceptance here than I ever did back home. Public approval for same-sex parenting in Germany stands above 80% today. In the US, it's around 63%. And those abstract numbers show up in practical details. The tone of voice at registration offices, the lack of hesitation in calling us a family. To me, that's the invisible power of inclusive design. Even if the paper form hasn't changed, the culture already has. Germany didn't design for us, but it allowed us to belong anyway. And that's a feeling I never want to take for granted. But the real surprise has been internally. Back in the States, I would have imagined measuring my success as a dad by efficiency. Could I change a diaper fast, manage bedtime in 30 minutes, fit parenting around my to-do list? In Germany, I feel like I had to unlearn that notion because now I have time. Real unstructured hours here with our son and with no competing capitalistic voice telling me to optimize them. And it's uncomfortable at first. Time forces self-reflection. It asks, who are you when you're not working? And that's when I started to realize that presence really is the work. A recent European study from the OECD found that fathers who take longer parental leave aren't just more satisfied, their children show higher early cognitive scores and emotional stability tests years later. You don't feel those statistics in the moment, but you feel their truth in the rhythm of everyday life. I remember standing in the kind of playground with high towers and rope bridges that would make most American park supervisors panic, and watching children climb with pure confidence. I realized I wasn't hovering, and neither was anyone else. The parents chatted, the kids, figured things out. And one dad next to me in a business suit with his tie loosened leaned over and said, "German playgrounds are dangerous, but they make brave kids." He wasn't wrong. That philosophy runs deeper than playground design. It reflects a national comfort with calculated risk, independence, and community accountability instead of constant parental control. German parents see early autonomy as education. American parents often see it as danger. It's entirely different definitions of love. All of that has changed me. I've stopped treating parenthood like a checklist and started treating it like a relationship that requires space. I'm definitely more patient. I notice details than when I used to rush through them. I hear the pauses in my son's breathing when he falls asleep on me. And every time that happens, I quietly think, I would have missed this if I were home in the States. Not because I wouldn't have wanted it, but because the system would have never made it possible. Germany didn't just give me time, it gave me permission to slow down, to only be a dad, not a provider in disguise. And as simple as that sounds, it's revolutionary. It makes me wonder how many fathers back home are waiting for the same invitation, not a handout, but a structure that finally treats caregiving as real work. So if you're watching this, I'm curious, have you ever had the choice to be fully present, or do you still have to fit fatherhood around everything else? And if you live in Germany, does it feel different for you too? Because for me, that choice, the one to simply be, has been the biggest freedom of all. Thanks so much for watching. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell to never miss an episode. See you next time.